What policy at the federal level is required to prevent an economic and generational explosion or implosion in agriculture? That's the question we're asking you and my two guests in this awesome episode of The Business of Agriculture. Before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture, a question for you about the aspirations you have for your business within agriculture. Do you have capital requirements, but you're not exactly fitting within the template of the local bank? No problem. Harvest Returns can help you get the funding you need to expand and grow your agricultural business. Chris Rowley assembled 18,000 investors, and with their money, does creating financing options to help you grow and expand. Maybe you're a specialty meat processing business, or you're in a mushroom business, or anything in between. Harvest Returns can help. Go to harvestreturns.com. That's www.harvestreturns.com to learn more about how you can get the money you need to grow your agricultural operation today. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I got a great one for you today. You might know these guys if you keep up on social media. One is named Elliott Henderson. He's with Henderson Family Farms in Northeast Iowa. He is a very active and intelligent guy and farmer, and he is in the next generation. He is 42 years old. He is joined by Lance Petersen of Petersen Farms of Rushville, Minnesota, I think is the name of the town. It's about an hour north of the Twin Cities. And he is here as a farmer. Both these guys also have some side gigs, and they wanted to make sure that I told you their opinions today are theirs as farmer business people, not the Iowa Corn Growers Association or of the cooperative of which Lance sits on as a board of directors. And we understand that. You know what? We have very frank discussions here. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about today might get you a little bit on edge. We're going to be very frank here, guys. We're going to be very frank about where we think ag is right today. And we're recording this in the beginning of 2026. And where we have some fundamental problems, that is demographically and economically and policy-wise. We're going to dig into all of that in a very smart fashion. Some of this is, like I said, it might rub you a little wrong. We're just giving you some facts and some well-informed opinions. So I asked the question, guys, what policy is needed? And I should point out that one of you is 42 years old, the other is 38 years old. You are millennials, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner. By the way, you're the first generation that somehow got a name and then it became a negative. Nobody ever thought that. That's not true. I'm a Gen Xer, and the whole thing about us, I got told when I was about 30 years old that I was a Gen Xer. That means I didn't want to work. And I said, well, I started working when I was 8. Is that early enough? So anyway, you're millennials, and there are some demographic issues. The average American farmer, age-wise, is about 60 years old. Been hearing this for a long, long time. It is continuing to go up a little bit. There are fewer of us. We do see consolidation happening right now. Lance provided some numbers, but the rough numbers are of the 1.9 million farms, 1.8 million farms in the United States of America, there is going to be more exiting right now because we know that there's some agricultural economic issues and there is some lack of profitability at the farm level. There are payments that are coming from the government to prop up the farm sector. Band-aids, not actual long-term fixes. So we're going to dig into what would be a long-term fix. Is there going to be a problem handing things off to the next generation? Can somebody that's 40 years old actually make it in this business, given the high capital requirements to do so? We're going to dig into all of that. We're asking a question about policy. We're talking about economics. We're talking about generational issues that are impacting this industry. And I guess I should ask the question right off. Is there really an implosion even coming? Is there really, are we all just squawking? Is this Chicken Little stuff? I'll lead off with you, Lance. Is there really an implosion coming?
I think right now it seems that it's more overstated. I think there's some change coming. I don't know if it would get to the implosion level. Obviously from the numbers I shared there from the ag census 2022 going back to 1997, that we've had a decline in number of farms and definitely a growth on the large scale farm. That I don't know if this thing is set up fully where it's going to implode as we continue to kick the can down the road, but we also are in the same situation, federal debt level sitting at 38 trillion. I think the ag side is something similar. So is that going to implode, or is everything just going to be kind of a too big to fail situation and we're just going to be able to keep doing what we've been doing and we're supposed to just smile?
Elliott, Is there really an implosion coming? Is there really a problem? I mean, or do we just think this because the last year and a half to 2 years has been a downturn economically? If we were sitting here in 2023 or 22, record year of farm income in the history of American agriculture, maybe we wouldn't be singing this song.
I think the implosion's coming. I think you look at the trend that has been established in the last 10, 20, 50 years. We continue to see this consolidation. You can't replicate the practices to grow wealth that have been done for the last half century. And I think you look at it is a chain reaction, and then you start taking into account what's coming over the horizon with AI and autonomy, and we've got to act now to change policy, because right now we've got a lot of policy that just continues to protect the incumbents and really staves off the entrance into this market for the future of agriculture.
Lance, that's an accurate statement. I'm not sure it's any different than it's been. I mean, really, I get it. I hear this thing from the producer level. I hear it more from the producers, obviously, that are your age and younger. But I've been hearing this for a long time. I got out of college in 1992. I was penniless, paying that. I still had debt to pay Purdue. I couldn't have hopped into farming, and that was 34 years ago. So the idea that somehow it's difficult to get into production agriculture today, well, I was a penniless guy that didn't have some big thing to go back to, no inheritance, no generational farming wealth. I couldn't have hopped into it at any scale. So I'm not sure this is a new story. What's different?
Well, I think at where we're at today is probably that gap of the dollars to be able to get into this. I mean, you're probably in that $1 million type range to be able to be a farmer player in this game by land, equipment, different assets, buildings, et cetera, that you're going to want to get into it. You don't have to go that route, but that is kind of the rough number, I guess, if you're looking at.
I think it's a low number, frankly. It's probably a low number, but yeah.
Yeah. And I should say that I'm prefacing this. I'm coming from northern Minnesota, where we farm between swamps and woods and housing developments and maybe not necessarily God's country where it's $20,000 acre ground. Yeah. I think we've seen the consolidation, but where Elliott mentioned on the AI, the tech type situation, a lot of the labor that we do have in agriculture right now is definitely on the older end of the spectrum. And as those retirements and exits hit, it's going to be probably the largest percentage drop of people that we have out there on the farm. And I don't know if we're fully set up for that, but at the same time, as we bring in technology and the equipment of scale that we have today, I don't know if we're going to feel that pain as much as we would think from that aspect, that we're not completely losing the ability to grow, raise, harvest crops. It's just going to be in a different manner, a lot more on the equipment and technology side.
Elliott,
what you ask is it different today? I think it absolutely is. If they go back and look at what the minimum wage was in 1976 and then comparing it to today, we need $66 an hour for minimum wage. I know a lot of guys that were first generation guys that were able to work in the foundry, chipping and grinding, and every couple of years they could buy 160, or maybe they ran the maintainer for the secondary roads department on the salary of a maintainer operator, and they could amass a land base of a couple thousand acres. I mean, you cannot replicate that today. So today we're absolutely not where we were in the past.
I was being somewhat instigatory when I said, oh, come on, it's always been the way. And I am doing that because, remember, I'm the generation ahead of you. I'm not a boomer, and I didn't do that. But clearly, I do know that it is different today. And what's different is we've got an inflationary situation on all of the inputs. We've got an inflation on certainly the price of real estate, agricultural real estate, and equipment and inputs, et cetera. And I would agree with you that that's a challenge. Now, I'm going to go another direction, though. We're talking about pure commodity production, or maybe even specialty crop production, where what we know historically, and that's why these numbers, Lance pulled the Census of Agriculture from 2022, in the most recent numbers. And commodity production, and even specialty production, it favors scale, and we are apparently willing to accept paltry, almost non-existent returns in terms of profit. So I agree that it's different today, but maybe it's just because it's a symptom of overproduction.
I think absolutely. And if you go back and look at some of the articles published, in the farm magazines in the last 20 years, there was a real appetite to farm more acres and make less money. I mean, that propaganda has been out there for decades now, and I think it's had some pretty significant influence on our society.
Lance, what do you think? Okay, so it takes a lot of capital to go out and produce commodities, and you won't make any money. So you'd say, well, why do it? Because here's the other angle on this, and I'm not being mean. I'm wearing my God made a farmer hat just to go ahead and make sure that all my farm friends realize I'm not bashing. I'm just saying, maybe all the signals are just very plain. Don't get into this line of work. Don't get into production agriculture. There's no money in it. It takes a shitload of capital to make it work, and there's no returns. Maybe that's the signal that almost every other business is allowed to operate in a true economic marketplace, where signals that say we don't need any more phone booths. Hey, I'm really good at manufacturing phone booths. Great. I'm really good at making soybeans. Fantastic. Go and dump them in the ocean. What? Yeah, we don't need them. Well, I'm really good at manufacturing phone booths. That's cool. But there hasn't been a payphone come out for the last 20 years. Maybe this is the signal that just says you shouldn't get in this business. I'm not being mean.
At the same time, we've had the signals for years. This is not new. There are a lot of farmers that are willing to work for free or almost pay to be able to run the tractor, the combine, do the thing. Other occupations out there probably don't get the thank yous, like we hear, thank a farmer, thank you for being a steward of the land. Yep. At the same time that it might be questionable on what we are doing. And they also probably don't have the opportunities that we do in agriculture, that when times do get tough, the taxpayer is there to help us out to make sure that we have more players in the game. When other occupations seem to have the ability that if things aren't going great, there's the consolidation. People leave that line of business and it kind of sorts itself out. On today's ag policy that we have, it allows us to keep farmers being in the production side of things to make sure that we don't skimp on the availability of producing a crop.
So Elliott was writing down something. By the way, Elliott's coming to us from the Farm for Profit studio, and those are my friends over there, Tanner and Corey and all that. And the other one I don't ever know because he never shows up. But Elliott's doing something interesting. He's sitting where Corey Hillebo normally sits, and he's doing something that Corey has never done in the history of that show. He's taking a note and actually thinking. That's something that Corey never has done in the history of that show. Anyway, yes, well, I did shoot that over your bow, Corey, buddy.
And Corey and Tanner and David, they've seen the future, and they know that there's a demand for the conversation that we're having right now when it's focused on policy. So a prior legislator here in Iowa, Louis Zumbaugh, and I started a show called Rush Hour Ag, and Corey and Tanner and Dave are a big part of seeing that take root and have some success now. So
all right, so here's the thing: you've got an industry that all signals are saying maybe you shouldn't get into this. But then there's the other part of it, Mr. Elliott. The government policy does still.
I set my sights squarely on policy. I mean, I look at what's happening here in Northeast Iowa. I remember growing up, we had these beautiful malls, with department stores in them. Well, Christmas time, it was magical. I remember that growing up. But today, when you look at them, there's hobos living in them, and they're tearing them down with excavators today. Well, if we had policy like we have in agriculture for these malls, there'd have been direct payments to keep these people renting the square footage in these stores, in these big buildings. There'd have been subsidies that protected the risk when they didn't sell enough shoes or shirts. And they'd be building onto these buildings today. And
a government taxpayer-funded insurance program that does guaranteed revenue. So the mall or the store within can say, yeah, I'm producing at a loss, but my insurance program paid for by the taxpayers gives me a guaranteed amount of revenue. By the way, farmers really bristle at this, and I've had them want to fight me. Oh, you don't get guaranteed net revenue. I'm like, well, I've done speaking engagements for almost every crop insurance entity that exists, and I've sat through the meetings, and they've run the charts and showed me that you can guarantee net positive revenue through an insurance program coupled with government programs. That doesn't happen in any other industry. You cannot get guaranteed net revenue to run the dry cleaners down the street from me.
That's my exact point, Damian. And I do think we can squarely lay the blame on a lot of these inflationary events in agriculture at the foot of policy that we have today, especially the expansionist row crop policies that exist.
I want to hear. I want to hear from Lance on that, because I want to hear where he lays the blame, and then also I want to get into what we think should happen. Before we do that, I want to remind you that if you are in production agriculture and you're looking for a real edge, why don't you take a look at nano yield products like Nano Pro. These are patented mineral-based nanoparticles that go in the tank. I'm talking about your spray tank, and you go across your field several times a year with your spray tank if you're a broadacre farmer, and you just put 4 ounces per acre. This nano yield product acts as a delivery system for your entire tank mix, whether you're trying to improve your weed control, your fungicide performance, or you get more out of your nutrients. Nano yield technology is an easy, affordable way to protect your investment and drive return on your investment. You know what? You insure your equipment. Why would you not insure your crop inputs? Essentially, 4 ounces per acre makes your stuff work better. Nano Yield is a family-owned company, and their products are proudly made in the United States of America. You can learn more at Nano Yield's website. That's www.nano-yield.com. Check out their grower testimonials on YouTube also. Policy. That's why people do it. You can say, well, yeah, there's no money being made, but there really is. I mean, you can at least break even. You can play farmer. Lance, maybe the policy is why we're where we are, and maybe it just stays this way forever.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we came out of 1980s, obviously the big farm crisis that allowed the new rules to be set forward going forward in agriculture for America, at least. And yeah, at the top of the list on the different topics here for us to talk about today, crop insurance, subsidization, that amount that we have set for producing crops in America is the number one reason that things happen. That if you're going to take out an operating line of credit, you better be insured. And very, I don't know what the word would be, it's very convenient that where you are taking out your operating line of credit, they probably sell crop insurance. It's a very nice little add-on for their business that allows them to decrease their risk on taking out a loan for a farmer.
Yeah,
Farmer is decreasing his risk as well.
The person, I've got people that listen, like my investor friend listens to this. If you're wondering what we're talking about, yes, you can get crop insurance. It guarantees you break even to even net revenue. And even though people fight with me about that. And the other part of it is there's different levels of the insurance, Lance, just to clarify for folks that maybe are saying, Damian, explain this. And what Lance's point was, the farm credit system that loans you money for your real estate or your operating loan also will sell you a crop insurance policy, the premium of which is generally almost all paid for by the taxpayers, and also all the rural banks. So if you get your loan from the Ag Bank of Minnesota, they will also probably sell you crop insurance. I just want to clarify that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's they go hand in hand, and that allows them to decrease their localized risk. Farmer gets to have that benefit as well. You have probably, I would say about 2/3 of the crop insurance bill is picked up via taxpayer funding. And the other third would come through on producer premium paid in. The numbers might adjust a little bit for every 5% increment of coverage. I guess you kind of say it's like you're selecting your deductible if you haven't bought crop insurance. And you obviously have to provide your production history and your acres planted. And that also ties in on the FSA, Farm Service Agency side of things, to make sure that you are enrolled in the government program for what almost seems to be an annual event now, where they will hand dollars out when the market conditions are not great.
So, Elliott, crop insurance is not the only thing. To his point, we also know that $12 billion just came out the door here of the federal government, direct payments to farmers. That's not the only one that was announced in 2025. That was like the third one. And so it's coming out in February. I mean, the payments will be made in February of 2026. And this is a trend that probably is going to continue. The good and the bad. Go.
You think it's going to continue? I think that the tax-paying public will probably lose an appetite to continue to support this. I don't think it continues.
It's been in place since the 80s. We let the farm belt twist in the wind, and Lance and I had a conversation about this before we recorded. The outcome, and Joe Vaklovic and I covered it in a past episode of the Business of Agriculture. Does America have the stomach to go through what happened in the mid 80s before we really started?
I think, modern social media and, as there's no, painting this through rose-colored glasses anymore. People are seeing that, most of these farmers today, they're worth millions of dollars. They've got cash and they're getting subsidized and continue to get breaks and direct payments. That's not the case for me. I'm a first generation guy. My operation is heavily leveraged, but there's a lot of equity out here inside the farming world. And I don't know that you can hide that. You can't hide that prosperity from the voting base that much longer. I don't think we're going to lose that. They're going to lose their appetite to support it.
Lance, do you think okay, it's been in place for a strong 40 years, really, 35 years. We had loan deficiency programs, which paid a minimum. It basically was a price floor. Okay. It wasn't a loan. It was an actual payment, meaning we think corn's only $1.60. We think you should get paid $2.12. So the government made the spread and paid. We've had direct payments. We did the thing called MFP during the trade spat. We had money that went out during the pandemic, like 50 billion plus went out in 2021, I think it was. The trend has been fling money at production agriculture. Elliott's making a case. At some point, somebody, the folks in the suburbs are going to say, well, wait a minute. I found out that farmer has a net worth of $5 million because of their real estate value and all of the tax incentive or tax, I should say, benefits you get. What do you think happens?
Well, I think I live in a state here that is very much represented, I would say 50-50 on both sides of the political aisle. And we look at how close things are at the DC level. If we're going to talk federal policy, very similar. There hasn't been any great excitement for separating out the farm bill between food assistance and payments to farmers, that there gets to be a song and dance and hoorah rah that they're going to do that. And they never do. I don't think people that really saw the 80s, if we went and interviewed people that lived it and had many sleepless nights and say, hey, what do you think? Should we go back to that, kind of high risk, high reward? And I don't think they'd have the stomach for it. I honestly don't know if I would. I think it would be tough. I've been told I have low empathy and maybe I could handle it, but I don't know. It takes the wrong person that decides to off themselves because things aren't looking great, and your view on things gets to be changed very quickly. And I don't know if the taxpayer, the voter, once things start being explained to them, if they would be like, oh yeah, that's great. I just don't see that happening currently, but we can see political winds change over the course of a few election cycles, and maybe that does happen. But then I think you will get yourself back into a situation like we did see 40 years ago.
So before we get to Elliott's take on this, it is a true story, and I am old enough to remember, and I do remember the auctions, and I do remember people crying, and I do remember all that stuff. John Mellencamp's song "Rain on the Scarecrow," came out 40 years ago, and about the sheriff taking the farm. About makes me cry thinking about it. There was a farmer in Huntington County that I remember got some sort of a notice from the bank. Probably they're going to come out and foreclose on him, and I distinctly remember that he didn't drive into town; he walked because he wanted to cool down and not take a weapon. That makes you cry thinking about it. But I remember those times. And I was asked that question by Vaklovic, who was on this show. And he said, Damian, you're a tough guy. And you talk about economics all the time. Do you have the stomach to watch a policy pullout that doesn't prop up agriculture because of the bloodshed that's going to be out here? And I'm not being mean, but, there will be, it'll be pretty, it could be devastating economically, et cetera. And, I kind of am actually, I'm kind of in agreement with Elliott that eventually I think when the secret gets out that these producers are generally sitting on pretty good net worth. The last articles I read, and the average voter doesn't know this, the average farm net worth is like 5 times what Main Street in USA is. And so, and those are the ones that are paying the bills to keep the price floor underneath this, or the subsidies, or the crop insurances, et cetera. So I kind of agree with Elliott, but then I also don't know that I don't know that I want to see it. I don't want to see the
I don't think any of us want to see it, Damian. But I mean, the trend in society, whether it's the Rust Belt, which is pretty close to you. I mean, this is happening now in tech. We want low cost. We want cheap stuff. And if it's happening in the beef market already here, that's really recent news. The consumer wants cheap beef. They understand it's probably premium and they can help their neighbor out buying it from them, but they want cheap. And when we're no longer the cheap grain producers in the world, which, the biggest growth of row crop in the world is not happening in South America. It's happening in Africa, and nobody's talking about that.
Mm-hmm. And it's
cheap labor, it's cheap land. We don't have it here anymore.
They got a lot.
Yes, sir.
They got a lot of room. And by the way, that's the thing where you almost wonder, are we being selfish? I worked in a factory. It's not there anymore because of EPA regulation, because of labor costs, et cetera. My wife and I were both factory workers when we were young and paying our own way through college. These factories don't exist like they did back then. We allowed manufacturing to leave for those very things. And, we heard a little bit about it, but nobody was singing the blues about, oh, boy, you just can't go and get a job in a factory anymore like you used to. I heard about it where I live because there's factories there. But by golly, you say, oh, well, I can't get into farming. Oh, wait a minute. It's almost like there's an entitlement mentality. And again, this is going to piss people off. Is that what we're talking about, Lance?
Yeah, I think the amount of producers that we have out there today of kind of that they should get to keep their almost God-given right to keep farming, that shouldn't be removed from what they have, and that they will scream socialism, welfare, et cetera, when there's bailouts that come through. But at the same time, they're willing to take it because that is part of the game. That is the rules. It just gets to be a tough spot that we haven't been explained the rules. And that when you lay it out there, that's what we happen to have in this commodity system. And I think it's getting to that point now where there are enough people that are like, hey, what are the rules again? Well, this is not what I really signed up for. I'm not feeling great about this. They're like, well, if you want to be a farmer, that's what you got to do. And it is getting to be tougher to stomach it, that this is the system and that you'll have to defend things when, like, it was not long here around the holidays of talking to different friends of, oh, yep, looks like you guys are getting more money. I'm like, yep, we're getting more money. Thank you for your money. And I think it's become this standard thing now. When the market slips, that's what happens, even though we have the backstop already there on the crop insurance side. But it just feels a little bit snowball running down a hill at some points too.
Yeah, I want to hear Mr. Henderson's thought on this, because first off, now I think we've admitted that, and you guys are farmers, so I'm not going to be the one that they crucify when they start bitching, but to pretend that we're not a backstopped industry is to not even pretend that you've ever picked up a paper. I mean, it's just, again, my barber down the road here doesn't have any of these. He has none of these programs to keep the barber in business. So we're going to go through what is needed, because we have the generational along with the economics and what I would call fundamental challenges globally, because to Elliott's point, we got Africa, we got South America, we got more global supply. Granted, there's more global demand than there's ever been, but there's also an excess amount of supply, more than there's ever been. So I want to go where that goes. I want to remind you, if you listen to this show, if you've seen me on stage, I talk a lot about the Asians of agriculture: innovation, inflation, regulation. But let's talk about frustration. Let's say you pay for inputs on your farming operation, you get nothing from them. If you're looking for cutting-edge bio-based solutions that truly deliver measurable yield performance with a great return on your investment, you need to know about my friends at Title Grow AgriScience. Title Grow did a field day and a trial on my farm, De La Rosa Farms in Huntington, Indiana. That's right. We're going to do it again this year. In fact, we did trial with their products. Their products are upcycled seafood byproducts. That's right. You heard that right. They are precisely formulated to deliver powerful plant nutrition and crop protection chemistry. Seafood byproducts, not seaweed. This is the real science that's powered by nature, built to positively impact your bottom line. These products do not require anything from you to change what you're doing. They integrate right into existing production practices, optimizing your current fertilizer and your crop protection program. It's about getting more out of what you're already doing and not having the frustration. You want to learn more about this? Go to Title Grow Ag. Title, like a big wave. Grow, like what your kids do. Ag. TitleGrowAg.com. That's TitleGrowAg.com. Tell them Damian Mason sent you. Elliott,
Yes.
I'm just going to throw it to you because I know you got a lot to say. Good God.
Yeah, I mean,
you two are two of the more opinionated people. If we threw Adam Lash in here, I wouldn't be able to talk.
yeah, true. Well, Shay Folks had a good post on.
Oh God, that guy's got some opinions too.
Well, I liked what he said there. If someone in Kansas can grow corn more profitably than someone in Illinois, Illinois has become the new fringe state. Like, what is wrong with our system if the guy in Illinois that is on some of the most fertile, productive land cannot be profitable, but we've got this policy that's driving expansion into these fringe states, and those guys are now more profitable? I mean, I do think it's came to this policy, this culture of rent seeking. The farmer is no longer the person that controls the land. And it's like the Rust Belt thing we brought up a little bit ago. Those folks had no control over the jobs they were doing. Same with the modern tenant farmer. They've got no control over the job they're doing anymore. They can't control the cash and the equity that they can build.
What needs to change? We better start.
I think more limits.
By the way, change is going to be sweeping, but we better start small. And unfortunately, have this talk all the time with my Business of Ag group. My buddy Ryan Moe says nothing's going to change. Policy won't change. Politicians won't change. Farmers won't change. The industry won't change. I said, well, okay. Then we got a bunch of guys your age that, unless you're well inherited, can't break in, which is fine. Then it becomes more institutional investor owned to those assets that Lance was talking about. And then the bigger one we got to ask is, if we continue these policies of go out and grow more corn and grow more soybeans, are we going to just start taking barges of soybeans, take them out of the Midwest, run them down the Mississippi, take them out of the Gulf of America, as it's now called, drive out to the Atlantic somewhere, and then just dump them and bring back the empty barge? Because the world doesn't need any more soybeans. So something's got to give, in my opinion.
Well, if you mention that on a production or supply control, which has been mentioned, I mean, we had a non-friendly market report here on Monday, and it has stirred up several conversations and all flavors of them and all types of different thought processes through it. So you bring in the production side of it. Yep, we're gonna grow it, but we're gonna burn it. We're gonna dump it. We're just gonna do whatever. Okay, but South America isn't. Africa isn't. Et cetera. Somewhere else on the world stage isn't going to do it, which would potentially at some point, let's say they produce enough and the dollars make sense, that we become an importer for certain things. Mm-hmm. And if you are in a pure free market stance, you're like, hey, I just need yellow number 2 brought to my doorstep, and it was cheaper to get it from Argentina this year than Illinois, for whatever reason, who knows? And you have to battle that. Back 40-ish years ago, we were number 1. We kind of said, yep, who needs corn, soybeans, wheat? Yep, we'll grow it. And over time, we are not number 1. And other places have been able to do things at a lower cost. That is the way commodities go. And if we talk on the change side of things, what needs to change, I kind of lean towards that. I don't know if it can, that you have a lot of headwinds on the policy side. You would need to get a whole different set of faces making decisions that probably are going to be younger. And I haven't fully seen that step up. I thank you that both Elliott and I are able to be here and discuss these topics, because that is probably the first step, is at least airing it out and being on X, that you're able to see a lot more voices there than probably ever before, is at least a step in the right direction from the past couple of decades.
You and I got a little bit sideways, Elliott. Not really, but when I said you're supporting this idea that we restrict who can buy land to thereby bring down the value of land and make it so that the economics might make more sense. And I said, so now you're choosing a favored class. I'm a farmer. I file a Schedule F, so that means I'm allowed to buy this piece of real estate. And Joe Blow over here, who just says, I'd really like to own that 80 acres of Iowa farmland, can't. That's a policy. That was at the state level, the proposal at the state level. But those are the kind of policies that you're talking about. Here's the thing. It might help farmer economics on the producer, absolutely devastates the farmer economics of the person that wants to get their money out of their asset, but it doesn't tackle the bigger problem of this production. So all these policies have...
I think it does, though. I mean, if you can make land more affordable to the farmer, you can also then produce a crop, a commodity cheaper. Okay. You could be more competitive in the world market. I mean, one of our largest expense is land. Well, if that expense goes down, we can be more profitable producing at a smaller dollar amount.
Okay, so so let's just say that, go through that scenario, so that land, we use legislation to make it so that you and Lance can buy farm ground, but my neighbor who's an investor can't.
Sure. I mean, we got preferential treatment on all kinds of things. It doesn't have to, it's not going to start there, but, start hammering down on 1031 exchanges. We've already got, that's already being abused. That's another thing that's keeping the cost up on the producers trying to own these assets that they're going to raise commodities on for the public to use. So it's like, we've got a lot of these policies that started out with good intentions. We just don't enforce anything anymore.
Well, we enforce them. I mean, 1031s are a policy that has been, it's not like it's nobody's breaking the rules. It's just that it makes it so you can sell something and then buy something and not pay the taxes in between. But
yeah, but it's supposed to be like kind.
Yeah,
it's not. It's abused. It's abused all the time.
I sold an investment condominium in Arizona and rolled it into a chunk of farm ground because they were both rental properties. So I did the 1031. I did everything by the book because it was legal. That's what you're allowed to do. One's an investment property to another investment property.
So you think you had a CPA that was willing to do that deal, or whatever transaction authority was willing to roll the dice on that one?
Yeah, well, it was legal and by the book. So if you get rid of that, so you think that brings down farm ground prices?
Absolutely. It's got supply and demand. If you've got less demand for farmland.
All right. So he's throwing out ideas, Mr. Petersen, that bring down the price of the biggest cost being real estate. That devastates the people that are holding the real estate. Aunt Martha, that her husband died and she's got this 160 acres. Now her land becomes worth maybe it drops by a third. Now she's in retirement. And her assets are worth less. And then the cash rent goes down because cash rents always correspond directly, although there's a time lag. Cash rents always correspond directly with land value. So now she makes less money and her assets worth less. So we just made it so Aunt Martha can't have a comfortable retirement. Again, that's bad.
Well, at the same time, you would be the 1031 I could see on the reform side of being a little more scrutinizing in some scenarios, but it also will, it could kind of slit your own throat a little bit, where if you decrease the land values, now your assets that you hold as a landowner, and let's say you're trying to buy more land, you now have smaller asset value if you're going to go finance something. So it's a very similar situation right now that we've seen over the past 2 to 3 seasons as used equipment values come down drastically, and you are trying to, let's say, sell a piece of equipment you own to buy something newer, not necessarily new. And obviously it is worth a hell of a lot less trade-in value-wise today than it was 3 years prior. And you're going to kind of have to wait to that point where it's almost in that depreciate out scenario where you're like, hey, I've used up its useful life. On the farmland side of it, you don't have that. You're not necessarily depreciating out land, wearing it out. Maybe in some cases there are parcels that are that, but that's a different topic that I'll probably get flack on X for. But when you get in this situation of picking winners and losers, yep, we're fine being the winner, right? Like, yes, please pick me. I would like to be the winner. I don't know if we're going to get that to pass. Then we should probably raise our hand and pick which category we're fine being the loser on. And there hasn't been anything presented that I've seen on the egg industry side of things where we are like, hey, yep, if we're going to be picked as winners, these are things we are willing to give up, or these are things we are willing to do for the rest of the people around us in our communities, regions, states, whatever it might be, that we can actually make it a fair compromise if we are going to change some rules of how the game is today.
And I don't want to see land values drop. Certainly it'll hurt me. I mean, I've bought in most of my land base at the high, but I feel like I'm trying to be a patriot to identify some of these issues to try to help the next generation out. And Aunt Esther, if she owns $18,000 an acre ground, is it really worth $18,000 an acre if you take away all these risk protection programs and direct payments? Will the appetite, just like the square footage of the strip mall, isn't it kind of artificial?
Yeah, and I pointed out in a video, and I got people pissed. It was this summer, and I answered a question. I was in one of my fields in Indiana walking, because I do that sometimes, and I give my ag commentary thoughts. And I said, this thing of why do non-farming people want to own farmland? Well, it's real simple. Same reason farmers want to own farmland. You mean they want to farm it? No, because it's a backstopped asset that backstopped by government policy that is also a one-to-one hedge against inflation. And it's a diversification play. The reason non-farm people want to invest in farm ground, me being one of them, is because of the same reasons a farmer would want it, because of the policies that are in place, to Elliott's point. He's still pissed about the fact that, you get that, Lance? He's kind of a hothead.
What's that?
You and I are like, I thought I was a hothead. He's still pissed that I used a 1031 instrument to roll proceeds from an investment property into another investment property, and he says it's not like kind.
It's income producing for income producing. That is not the first time I have seen that scenario play out. I'm 50 miles from the Twin Cities Metro, so we get to see some 1031 things happen that are creative but very legal, because those are the rules that are set. People that we elected to go to Washington, D.C. voted on things, and they said yes, and that's the rules we get to play. It is unfortunate that people don't understand that's what the rules are. Yeah. And when you hear that's what the rules are, and we can be upset, we can be like, yep, we would like this changed. Well, Lance Petersen, Elliott Henderson, Damian Mason, we don't get to go to DC at the IRS office and say, yep, change that. It's us three. No. So that is the tough part.
I think you're going to have some viewers hear this, and they're going to say that like kind is not representative of just the deposits that are made off of what the income is. Like kind is, by definition, a similar type property. The guys around here that are selling rock quarries and buying farmland because they both produced income, it's not the same thing. And I just don't think that we're enforcing it.
Yeah, well, and obviously there are exchange agencies that do sign off on it. Obviously, you go through and check all the boxes on your end, and then there's an entity that between you don't even touch the money, and they're the ones that make it a legal exchange. Let's go through.
Well, I'll come clean quick, because I sold an event center here in 2019, right before COVID, and I bought a sod farm with it. Well, I had to borrow more money to buy the farm ground, but I did exchange, the building for the buildings. So, it was like kind, but I think there's too much of an abuse of this.
So you want to change. Let's talk about what policy you think needs to happen. First off, everybody that's 70 years old is going to say, I'm fine with things just the way they are. And believe it or not, those boomers still have a boatload of political clout. We got a president that's 70, what the hell is he, 77 or something like that years old. So he's in that old range of the boomers. You've got the old people vote. That's why every time the Democrats want to win something, they put out their commercials that the Republicans are going to throw grandma off the cliff. One of my favorite commercials, by the way. If you're old enough, you Google that or YouTube it. It's really funny because it keeps showing him pushing wheelchairs off of cliffs. It's so much political theater that it's like you think it's a Saturday Night Live skit. So you should check that out. Anyway,
you gave me some ideas for some AI videos to make now.
Yeah, AI. Yeah. Anyway, so old people vote, and there's a whole bunch of old people in ag that are the incumbents, to Elliott's point, that are benefiting from this. So there's that thing of they're going to say, that's fine. The next generation wants to do it. But I just wonder, okay, you talked about get rid of crop insurance, get rid of 1031 exchange, or at least make them much more restrictive. Getting rid of federal payments to farmers, and then also putting in ownership restrictions. That's a heck of a lot of things to change. So either one of you can take that one and tell me what thing you think, if there's anything beyond that, and then how those are actually ever come into play.
I mean, property taxes, I guess, would possibly be a way to implement some change. You've got ownership restrictions there already where commercial property, residential property is taxed differently than ag land. And, should there be different brackets for ag land ownership where if you're owning it as a tenant property, it should be taxed similar to the ownership of a apartment complex, and some type of ag tax that's similar to if you own your own home and you've got exemptions for home ownership. We could get creative, something like that even.
All of those, many of these then, I guess, Lance, you said, which things do you win, which things do you lose? Several of these are winners for lose. Ownership restrictions makes it easier on farmers, bottom line. Property tax breaks for ag land makes it easier on farmers. 1031 doesn't necessarily hurt them, but getting rid of crop insurance and federal payments, you're going to see a spike in bankruptcies, the likes of which we have not seen since probably 86, 7.
Yeah, I think if you don't have to necessarily remove the program, but obviously probably a wind down of the subsidy rate sent out to there. Give a 5 to 10 year type time frame. Say, hey, we're going to give you this amount of time to get you back to this particular rate, and then at that point, it's going to be less government involvement from the taxpayer side of things. The bailout dollars, similar thing potentially, but yeah, there will be pain, and the kicker in the egg industry is the independent mindset of I want to do it my way. This is my farm. Please don't tell me what to do. Maybe there's going to be some kind of compromise that we've seen in other discussions of, hey, I am going to do things in a more environmentally friendly manner in my particular watershed or my particular area, that maybe that adjusts what you do receive on a subsidy thing, that you can compromise on the way you're farming, the way you're growing a crop, that allows you to have a little softer cushion for things on the years where it's tougher revenue wise. Those are some potential things. I've never seen a situation, and this is great to have here, where we can whiteboard out the ideas and throw them out there and say, hey, these are all the spots where we can get into this, because I think there are areas for compromise that we haven't really fully discussed yet.
Crop insurance reform has been something that's been discussed for many years now, and it's always been really focused on acreage. Everybody wants to get emotional about, well, what limitations do you want to limit acres on? I mean, I just recently been seeing some ideas floated about don't limit it on acres, limit it on lifetime dollars. Limit it on everybody gets a $500,000 lifetime cap. When you hit that cap, you're done. You can't get crop insurance anymore. It would make you a better steward of your finances, how much you're willing to stick your neck out to overpay for poor ground. To me, that seems like a very smart way about going about reforming crop insurance. Put some limitations on it for lifetime.
That's I've not actually heard that one floated. Of course, that means that then they'll keep doing it. So every operator will make sure that the wife has got one, and then the kids all get one. So and then
there again, you put enough rules in it, and that's what we're doing with the layering centers up in Minneapolis too. Like, there's rules there, but people are abusing it. We just need to get better about eliminating abuse.
So here's the thing. I said about the next generation thing, all of your stuff made it, almost everything that Elliott's talking about it helps farmer bottom line. Well, crop insurance abuse, getting rid of crop insurance doesn't, but the other ones do. We haven't still tackled the bigger elephant in the room, the fundamentals that my friends in ag don't see. We're growing corn in northern North Dakota and also in Mississippi and in eastern Colorado, where they get 4 inches of annual precipitation. We've expanded this production because the policies we currently have incentivize it. And I'm not being mean. Everybody, humans adjust their behavior based on incentives. And that's what we've got. Everything we've talked about, though, does it reduce supply? And then I have some people say, Dave, you keep talking about reducing supply because there's too much of a surplus on the globe, but everything we reduce it by, Brazil's just going to increase more. So there's still going to be the same amount of oversupply. And I say, well, at some point, it doesn't make sense for them either from a profitability standpoint. We haven't tackled the big thing, which is we've got tremendous surpluses that have put this economic reality in play, meaning lack of profitability. Who wants that?
Sure, this lack of profitability. Go ahead, Lance.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't think it is unique to the American farmer that we are in a tight margin business. I think it is also tight in South America, Australia, that is commodity production. That is what you sign up for. And that just because we're in it, we shouldn't be necessarily guaranteed X amount of dollars per acre to do it. For our livelihood. There are plenty of opportunities market-wise to set yourself up on a risk management situation that allows you to be a more profitable farmer. And the supply thing, I mean, I don't foresee us getting into an OPEC type scenario where we are going to control and throttle corn production from here to Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, obviously through Europe, that we're not going to be on board that way. And we are also going to be subject to different weather events. Like I've seen people say, yep, we need to throttle production back. Okay, let's say we throttled production. It was 2012. We had a drought that was pretty widespread and took a hell of a dent of the corn crop.
Yeah. But
what do you do then? Now you just skyrocketed what you do have for sale into insane prices.
Yeah, we were fine because we generally carried a surplus, and then we lost really 1/3 of the crop. We were roughly 2/3 of expected yield. And so it put us almost into a shortage scenario. So that's why USDA policy has generally, to Elliott's chagrin, usually USDA policy has just done everything to say more production, and we don't care if these guys are, if we're spending a lot of money on it. Generally, we've obviously managed for massive surpluses.
Right. Yeah, that supply situation, that if we are going to get into quotas, controlling it, and we get into a weather scenario that we can't get ourselves out of, then we get to do this cycle all over again. Every time we see $8 corn, you may as well get ready for $3 corn. It just does that.
You bring up the expansionist thing with corn, and you're seeing more of these acres push it into the south, and replacing cotton, replacing rice. One thing I guess I'd like to recognize is that corn has been very successful at building the industry around corn, where cotton, the mills that used to spin cotton, they got exported. Those jobs aren't here. Those mills aren't here. Right. I can't speak to rice, but you can see that those industries have contracted in this country while corn is king and it's grown. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but something happened bigger than just Midwestern agriculture, but the efforts of what's happened in the I states or the Midwest, it's really being taken advantage of now by the rest of the country. And I can't fault them guys for wanting to put these acres in. It's profitable to grow corn, but we've totally got lackadaisical on a lot of these other crops, and we've let that stuff get exported.
You mean the consumption or the demand for it? Meaning we don't have textile mills in South Carolina
Yes, sir.
anymore, whereas 40 years ago we had textile mill. We used our cotton here domestically, but also there's massive amounts of supply. Again, we're just so good at making the stuff. So what policy changes? We said what policy is needed to prevent economic and generational implosion in ag? We've gone into the economics, the generational aspect of this. I'm telling you, nobody in that boomer thing, and you guys are millennials. They're not eager for any change. So what happens if nothing happens? That's the big one. So if what happens if nothing happens? Lance, go first. What happens if nothing happens? 1 year from now we're having this call. 3 years from now we're having this call.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's going to be if we're going to punt this and there's no major advancement policy wise that upsets the current apple cart. Consolidation, I think, is number one via farmers that at some point someone's going to cry uncle and they're like, I'm not a farmer anymore. My family is not farming and we are renting it out.
Which is happening. There's plenty of numbers of producers exiting production, but the acres don't exit production.
The acres are still there.
Tend to be staying in production, which means consolidation, get bigger as exits happen, and then we still have our massive oversupply. Yep,
and you'll start with that. The secondary plausible scenario I could see is row crop agriculture eventually going the way of confinement hogs and poultry, and for those that have been in the hog production side, I never was. I'm up here, northern Minnesota, know enough people, southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, that they were doing the hog thing. You get through the 98 scenario that is a bloodbath, and now you get this new system of integrated hog production.
So, by the way, if you're not familiar and you listen to my show, hogs were generally more independently produced, and farmer took the risk and also took the profit. In the late 90s, hogs went to less than 7 cents per pound. You couldn't even haul them to town for what you were getting per pig. Massive amounts of independents left in a hurry. Some of them saw it coming. Many of them were actually harmed financially pretty badly, wounded, and that rolled in. Pork became the poultry model, vertically integrated through large corporations, and that's where hogs are now. If you see a hog barn in a country, it's very likely that the farmer feeds them, cares for them, does not own them, does not pay for the feed, and just gets the manure and a payment per pig per day. Just wanted to make sure that and people listening to this didn't know that's what the business model is. And your point, Lance, is you believe that might be the model for all of production agriculture. It just becomes vertically integrated and a farmer's an employee.
Well, not necessarily all of it, but a larger percentage than people are probably willing to admit at this point. And if that's the route that we end up going, you definitely lose your independence of where you're going to market, what you're going to produce that particular year. You become a contract grower. Unpopular opinion, that might be great for some people and some operations. That might be fantastic for them dollar-wise. They will get to keep the ownership of the land, just like we see for the hog production side. They get to still own the barn, but they are still going to have to go that situation of finding someone to fill the barn and have the market conditions to do it. At some point, someone might come to you on your acreage that's being contract grown and say, "Don't need you this year." Or
now your acres are sitting idle. You still have to pay the loan for the land, and then nobody is going to pay you to grow the commodity on it. Just like if you had a duck. By the way, I looked at a duck barn deal with my brother years ago, and I said, "Are you obligated to keep my duck barn full for this contract?" They said, "Well, no. If we don't need the ducks, it'll sit for a while." I said, "But the bank still wants me to pay for it." Mm-hmm. Same thing. Elliott's got something to go.
Yeah, I do think we're going to continue to see the, rural life in its decline if we continue to go down this way. There's just no equity. The cash isn't coming back to these communities. You talk about, these older folks that are basically, we've got policy in place now through capital gains that they want to die with that land so that their heirs can receive, without having to pay the capital gains. They want to step up in basis. Well, those heirs left because there was no opportunity for them to farm. So now they live in another state. So we're going to see these landowners in their waning years, die with this land, give it to the kids that don't live in the state. They're then going to spend this money someplace else where they live, not here. Yeah. We're going to continue to see rural economies wither. We need to get a system that transitions this land earlier in life, not after the kids are gone and left the state.
Except they generally, though, the older generation likes to hold on to it and has been resistant, even though they could do a 1031 exchange. You know what? That condo to farm ground can go just the exact opposite. Grammy and Grandpa can leave Iowa, sell that 160-acre chunk of ground, and buy a condo in Arizona with the proceeds on a tax-deferred exchange.
I don't think that's 100% accurate, Damian. It might work for some people. Actually, people that aren't being advised to do that.
Well, I'm not the tax expert on that, but anyway, the point is they could do this. So it's not happening.
Sales on contracts. Yeah, we could have a system in place in the state that backstopped sales on contract to make sure that if these people sold on contract, they could capture step up and they could live off the income from basically like a reverse mortgage. We could be doing more things like that to make this more appealing for young people to get into it. But we're not doing any of this stuff.
Interesting. All right. So the other one on this is do we create a generational? I mean, it's one thing to be on social media and squawking about the boomers or whatever. Some of these things you talk about, are we talking about favoring a generation? Are we talking? I mean, we already do beginning farmer loans. Trust me, a kid that's penniless can build that barn that Lance talked about for $1.2 million with zero down payment and like 1% interest. Try and go and buy a $1.2 million collision repair business. You can't do it. USDA does do that. So we already do favor beginning operators with favorable loans, et cetera. Are we talking about more programs that favor based on age demographic?
I hope not. I hate the idea that we're going to expect the next generation just to have a bigger payment to afford our cost of living as we get in our older years. I don't have a real gripe with that.
A young person, another angle on this, a young person, say younger than you, that wants to hop into mom and dad's operation, they're pretty good situation there. Now, what you're talking about might upset the apple cart for the son of the daughter of the incumbent that's already favored. It's a lucky sperm club to be the kid that's coming into the farming operation where they own multiple thousands of acres that was purchased by Grandpa for $400 an acre, and now it's worth $14,000. They got no complaints. That 22-year-old has no complaints.
This country was founded on limiting noble classes and the churches from owning everything. And that's why we've had estate taxes in this country for, I think, since it was founded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned here, Damian, Lucky Sperm Club. Hilarious that it is definitely something that we don't think of in here that, I wish I could win the Super Bowl. Well, I didn't get the athleticism to be able to do that in my lifetime. I ended up being the son of a farmer. Or let's say, I really want to own a crab boat. I watched Deadliest Catch, and that's so cool. I wish I could be, catching crab up in Alaska. Nope, I didn't get that. And at some point, yes, we have certain things that we wish we could do, reach for. I understand of beginning farmer and wanting to get into it. And there is I'll admit it that I am into the Silver Spoon Club. I get to be born on third base here and get to farm. And it is for me, being the third generation here in Minnesota, that is to keep it together. And sometimes that's easier said than done for the way the process has gone. And I think when we do this thing of being preferential and selecting groups, we also have to have a little bit of grain of salt that looking at other industries that isn't something that we allow someone to be able to kind of walk on, be like, yep, you're now on the roster for the Super Bowl. Good for you. That we kind of have to limit how far out we want to be preferential on this.
Elliott was writing down notes. I know he's been pissed most of this episode. He's just an angry guy, but And he's
it must be like a
got to call the
genetic
IRS and make sure that my 1031 is all done right.
I have a feeling there's going to be some editing involved in this show.
No, I'm fine with it. I like the way it is. I'm just telling you that now he's out there saying that I might have been stepping out of line on my 1031 exchange. I can promise you it was signed off on by everybody but my mom, I think. Anyway.
Lance makes me feel like a freakish genetic specimen to be able to play in the Super Bowl of farming every day here as a first generation guy. But, in fact, this is probably what got Damian and I talking the most here was, this preferential treatment that exists that people don't realize that they're already benefiting from. And most
farmers don't pay income taxes of any consequence because of the ability to see depreciations and acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not being mean. And again, you get mad. It's a true story. Tell me.
The asset values on property taxes are assessed at a much lower rate than what they are in commercial property.
If I owned a warehouse, it was worth the same value as my farm. My billable tax would be tremendously more.
It's 10x. I've got some commercial property, and it's 10 times what my investment is in eggland.
So you've got those things going. So there are preferential treatments of the farming sector that are in place right now. So I guess when I asked you what do you want to see happen? No, you already told me what you want to see happen. You want to see crop insurance move, 1031 exchange, et cetera, et cetera. You want to see maybe some tax breaks for ag land, which you already said they already get it. Ag land already gets a tax break in terms of compared to the warehouse. What do you think is most likely? This show releases, we go down the road, you and I, or me and Lance, we're all buddies here. 1 year from now, 3 years from now, we somehow are in the same place at the same time drinking a beer. And I say, damn, you were right. That one thing. What's most likely to happen sooner versus later out of all the stuff that policy happens? I'm going to go out there and say, I'll give you mine. I think we see a removal of acres and probably some incentive to do so. And that will, by doing so, it will possibly bring down those land values. But I see it reducing supply, which helps the market price. It doesn't do anything to correct the other fundamentals for what you talked about, next generation being able to get in. That's the one thing I see happening. What do you see happening?
I'm not going to be wishful here. I'm going to say if we're going to sit down and drink a beer a year from now, they're going to come out with some more of the wrong stuff type policy that now pays cattlemen more money to try to compete with the row crop acres out there so that they can grow more cattle out there. And it's going to be an escalation of stupidity is what I think is going to happen the next year.
Lance, what's happening?
I'll take it that we'll probably see a little bit more state involvement on policy, that there'll be, I'm up here in Minnesota, Elliott, you're down there in Iowa. We differ politically as states, but I think you're going to see the states want to have their own flavor of what they're going to do for the direction of things. I am not holding my breath on federal policy changing very fast anytime soon and in a positive direction. Versus on the state side of things, I'm serve on a few boards here that are more so on the water quality, environmental aspect of it. And some of those things are probably going to push either farming practices, what acreage is farmed in a different manner than it has been. And I think you're going to see a little bit more, especially down in Iowa. We see some news articles that happen to make it out on things there through Des Moines Water Works. Maybe things are going to change policy-wise at the state level before we get to see anything moving federally.
You're talking like in Iowa here. Go ahead, Damian. Sorry.
Yields will go down in a short term on environmental policy that will probably come about at federal and or state level. To Lance's point, I believe that we're going to have farmers are going to have to submit nutrient plans, and they will be absolutely scrutinized over this when we figure that 2/3 of our applied nitrogen ends up in the watershed and it's not necessary to grow the crop. There could be a yield adjustment when those nutrient management plans become regulatory legislation, but we will adjust and our yields will go back up, which is always happens because we are so good at producing stuff. The big changes I see, obviously, is I do think I think we're going to see a lot on the environmental front, which will be about removal of highly sensitive land. We used to call it highly erodible land. Some of those things might end up happening, but I don't see anything that is going to be specific to the demographic aspect, and that means that the incumbents are going to continue to consolidate, and the Lucky Sperm Club, the kid that's born into the 10,000 acre operation of which 5,000 is owned, is now going to be farming 20,000, and 7,500 of it's going to be owned. And that's what I probably see happening in the next year or two.
Maybe you're not tracking this. The governor here in Iowa just came out with a policy they want to try to implement in this session that, they're going to do property tax freezes for senior citizens here.
Yeah, and by the way, that's our friend Vance Crowe talked about that happening in St. Louis. You are talking about creating an absolute generational civil war. Wait a minute. I mean, it's one thing. We already get your Social Security.
I like geriatric republic better.
Yeah. Well, when you're making it so that you get to a certain age, you have to pay property taxes. Then it's the same old thing of a free rider problem. Then, oh, hey, there's an initiative that we got to build some new schools. Well, schools are funded by property taxes, more so in rural areas than even in the cities, because that's one of the big expenses. The 65-year-old's not paying any property taxes. That's right. We need a new school and a $50 million stadium so I can go down there and watch my grandkids play basketball. Well,
and
you didn't pay
they
for
need
it.
to buy
Grams.
more homes to rent out.
Yeah, you didn't pay for it. All right. Last thought. Anything, Elliott?
I appreciate the opportunity here, Damian. I think this is great that we can get this message out there, and it's important that people, use their critical thinking and pay attention to what's going on, because there is a need for some change, and people need to start thinking about how it's affecting them.
I find it's bad. I'll throw you my one point and I wore my God Made a Farmer hat and all this, that and Lance said, he said, we might ruffle some feathers or some thin skin out here. This is a real problem. And I think that the three of us, we can say we don't have empathy or whatever. That's not true. We care about this. That's why I love passion. Well, passion's an uncontrolled emotion, and I don't want to be an uncontrolled, that's like a 13-year-old girl. I'm just saying, we think about this business and we deliver some hard truths. I just say that from an oversupply standpoint, and then expecting that the government's going to continue to throw money out here to do this, something is going to give. And I do believe that, we talk about being outvoted and all this stuff. When it looks like our entire political involvement is just going and saying, give us some money because we work hard, we're farmers, that thing, it becomes worse than little boy cries wolf. It becomes, well, why in the hell are we doing this? And so I think if we don't push for some changes, it's going to be imposed upon us. And I mean, that's my thought. Lance, you can close it out here.
Yeah, I would agree. I appreciate you having us on here today. And from the farm side of it, yes, I'm called a meanie, a bully, et cetera, whatever online when I share my opinions, but we may as well have the discussion now. We may as well be understanding, hey, let's bring it forth at this point and be able to find a way to get ourselves to the table to discuss this and come at it with an intelligent way of articulating the message, instead of just nodding the head and being like, yep, thank us for farming. We did a great job. If you didn't have us, you wouldn't have food on your table. And it's like, well, maybe we also need to grapple with some of the fact on the policy direction that we have had got us to where we are today. And we should probably come up with a way to adjust it for the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that wrap up on that. And frankly, the way things have been the last couple of years and these payments going out the door, maybe instead of telling everybody, if you ate today, thank a farmer. If you farmed today, thank a taxpayer. Not being mean, being honest. And I think you'll hear that from folks like Lance and Elliott. He's Lance Petersen from Minnesota. You can follow him on social media. I do. He's on Twitter, and he does have some truth bombs out there. Elliott Henderson from Henderson Farm Corp there in North Iowa. He's a great dude, but do not ever divulge him. If you accidentally turned in a receipt and expensed it, by God, this guy is basically a little, he's like, you know what he is, Lance? He's like that FBI dude. He's the J. Edgar Hoover of agriculture out here, man. He like wants to come after you from the IRS and the FBI. He's bringing it, man. What's that dude that went after Al Capone? Elliott Ness. He's the Elliott Ness of agriculture out here, man. He wants to bring you down. So anyway, be careful with that. Anyway, they're awesome dudes. Keep up with them on social media. They do a lot of stuff on X. And thank you for tuning into this. Remember my sponsors. I got Nano Yield. I got Tyler Grill. I got Harvest Returns. And if you have a meeting in 2026 and you say, I got to knock this out of the park, remember, I've been doing this for 32 years, hopping on stage, and I would like to come to your event and hop on stage and talk about the business of agriculture. Until next time, I'm Damian Mason. Share this with somebody that can benefit from it. Do hit subscribe to my YouTube channel. Elliott, Lance, and me. This is the Business of Agriculture. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Business of Agriculture. If you're planning a 2026 agricultural meeting or even getting a jump start on 2027, please consider putting me on stage. Almost 32 years now that I've been traveling around North America hopping on stage. If you put me on stage at your meeting, I promise I'll bring insights, outlook, and a dose of entertainment to help your people navigate a rapidly changing business of agriculture. Thank you so much for your consideration.